A bipartisan group of senators has managed to scrap together a deal on DACA, but it doesn't address all of President Trump's demands on immigration. Here's what Senator Mike Rounds, Republican of South Dakota, told us earlier.
At this point, I wouldn't say that it's rock solid yet. We most certainly are looking at this as an alternative. I think on the Republican side, many of us would like to see the president's proposal as offered by Chairman Grassley have the opportunity to be voted on. And if we're not successful there, we don't want to give up on what the president wants to have done.
For more, we welcome Chief Washington Correspondent Kevin Cirilli from the White House. Kevin, so it seems there are many proposals out there, some by Senator Mike Rounds and others, also Senators Grassley. What does the president right now like, and what does he need to see in order to get something approved?
Well, I thought that what was so great about that interview is that it really does show that the White House is not entirely on board with this bipartisan consensus that is formed in the Senate with regards to immigration. Now, of course, this bipartisan group of senators is working with folks like outside groups in the business community as well as from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. But on the flip side of that, the White House is a bit more taking a conservative approach, people from the likes of Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley. So there's a lot of competing factions right now, and it's not entirely sure where the White House stands on this in terms of what specific policies they'd like to get on board with. This, of course, we've noticed this as part of a trend in terms of whether it's on an issue like healthcare or tax reform, or even to some extent infrastructure, where exactly in the weeds this White House stands. But then at the end of the day, they just try to get to some type of deal. So right now, we're at a bit of a standstill on this. But we're going to have to wait and see just where these battle lines ultimately come down on.
And Kevin, as far as you can tell, because you report down there from the White House all the time, is this really within the president himself? Because we've heard from the president he definitely wants to take care of the Dreamers, no question. And I take him at his word. I believe he's sincere. He wants to take care of it. On the other hand, he doesn't want to give an inch on things like what he calls chain migration or the lottery. Do we have any indication of which of those two President Trump's is likely to prevail?
So, you know, I've asked that question and variations of it, David, to several aides in the Republican Party and folks who work with the White House, outside the White House, and it really depends on which faction of Republican you're speaking to, because as you mentioned so rightly is that the president has given comments that he wants to take care of those 800,000 Dreamers, and you hear that in some of his rhetoric, but for every line that he says about that, you also have the line from his State of the Union address where he says that Americans are dreamers too. And so he wants to take care of the base. So there is that inherent tension right now and just no clarity.
Only clarity on those 4 pillars that he's already demanded, and he's not backing down. Kevin Cirilli, thank you so much, our Chief Washington Correspondent from the White House.